Overcome Imposter Syndrome. Three simple steps. Today, we're going to serve you three practical strategies at a minimum to help you dismiss doubt and fully embrace your capabilities. Stay with us until the end because not only will we explore these three life changing steps, but we'll also share a special gift exclusively for our viewers. And if you're looking to deepen your journey and connect with like minded individuals, be sure to check out the links in the show notes to join our community. So, that being said, let's go ahead and get this party started. Hold on, wait. There he is, the star of the show. Chris, what's going on, brother?
Greetings, fellas. How y'all doing?
Okay, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, star of the show.
That's not me. That's not me.
Well, it ain't. It ain't. I mean, according to the owner of the channel, I mean,
The owners are actually watching us. So
I it ain't my name on the YouTube channel.
listen,
I didn't create the show notes and put all of this stuff together.
listen. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I put out our disclaimer. Again, on this platform, this is the Empowering Perspective community. That being said, everybody is a subject matter expert of their own perspective. So, we'll make sure that we honor and respect everybody's point of view. So, I want to kind of dive into it and make sure that we kind of unpack this thing and lay it down flat so there is no confusion whatsoever. So, gentlemen, without further ado, what is imposter syndrome?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one for me because imposter syndrome. If I'm looking at it as what I'm reading, imposter syndrome is when real life is catching up to how you act. Like you know what I'm saying? It's that, but I don't know. Maybe I'll learn something tonight.
Uh, Imposter syndrome would be when someone has accolades and achievements and they're doing everything, but they don't allow themselves to get excited, to take in the full, to enjoy the moment, because it's like that. I guess inside they're telling themselves, "I still ain't made it," no matter what's going on in their life. All the wealth and achievements that they that they have, they don't enjoy it.
Okay.
I, mm, and this is not the full scope, but this is just what comes to my mind as I try to think about it. Uh, it's like when your heart and actions don't line up, but your actions are getting it done, and that's what comes to my mind. That's the simplest way I can put it.
All right, so let me get a, get a stab at it. For me, I kind of got to relate it more to like an analogy. So I remember when I was in the military, I remember I had an NCO sergeant major that said that if you get promoted ahead of your abilities, eventually it's going to come out. And you know what I mean? So if you made E5 too fast, when you start doing E5 stuff, people are like, oh no, this dude probably wasn't ready. So I guess like for me, it's like almost like a feeling of inadequacy. Cause like when I first got promoted to E7, I wasn't really sure, you know what I mean? Like, did I really do everything that I needed to do in order to get promoted? You know what I mean? So it's almost like kind of like doubting your success or kind of feeling like inadequate, like maybe luck had something to do with it more so than like your own abilities or something like that. So that's kind of how I look at it, how I'm kind of wrapping it up.
Okay. I do like that analogy. I'm glad you and I weren't in the same unit when your sergeant major said that, though. Let's kind of unpack it a little more. Gaddy, you made mention of when I'm not aligned, right? So my heart is not aligned with what I'm actually putting out. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think, and as men, we talk, hearts of men. I think as men, sometimes we do a thing because it gets the bills paid. It is what we need at the moment, and sometimes doing that can get you caught up in there because you got to continue to pay the bills. And I'm just using this as an analogy, right?
Mhm.
Now, sometimes that thing was just a way to but it's not who you are inwardly. It's not what you strove to do and be. And I know sometimes we right where God wants us to be and where He puts us, but sometimes it feels like I am selling myself out for the sake of of, of paying this mortgage, or for the sake of doing this, you know. And if you never search out a path or a way to align yourself with where you're trying to be, where you want to be, where you saw yourself be, where you work to be, you end up feeling like I'm someplace, or I'm somebody I'm not. Or yeah, I'll leave it like that.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. Roland, you made mention of not allowing myself to kind of like bask in the feeling of my accolades per se. Can you tell us a little bit, like unpack that just a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think I first heard of this in a psychology class, back in the '90s or something. But yeah, I'm old. But it's where a person, because from what my understanding, that it was looked at as a mental condition. And it was, because people would kind of say, well, you're just stressed out, or you're just uh, going through a situation. Or they looked at some people as trying to be humble, where they wouldn't it's something where you feel guilty almost for the things that you're doing, and you're not allowing yourself to feel any type of it's like, some people have fake humility. No problem. All glory be to God. Some people have fake humility, and others, they're actually humble because they know where they started, and they know where they are, and they know where they aren't. When it comes to these people with the imposter syndrome, their work says they're here, but they will never allow themselves to feel as if they made it, feel as if they did a good job. And it turns into a depressive state almost, and it can be confused with depression, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think for the most part, you guys are spot on. Um, I don't want to, and I'm saying this for a reason, and we'll clear it up as we go forward. I don't want to intertwine humility in with this because it's easy to do. It's not, it's humility is understanding who you are, but not trying to be more than what you are, recognizing where your power come from and lowering yourself to a standard to where you esteem others higher than yourself. It's more so of a thing to where it's not that you think less of yourself, you just think about yourself less. That would be humility. In this particular scenario, like Roland just articulated, like there's all of the evidences before you that you're actually doing the job, but you still feel like somebody is going to find you out to be a fraud or a phony or something of that nature. It also kind of lends into the space to where I find very difficult. I find it difficult to accept the praises that other people give me, not because I'm humble, but because I feel like I don't deserve it. I feel like it was just luck. I feel like it was just happenstance or something of that nature. And then moving further into it, I'm loving Garfield's analogy because he is right. However, I wouldn't package it that way, kind of like the advice that was given. Like, I do understand what he was saying. Like, there are some people who just kind of hide behind, and in the army, it's easy, right? Because if you don't do anything stupid, eventually you get promoted. Just being transparent. There's some people who hide and give the perspective that they know their job, but they really don't know their job, and then they mess around and get promoted. And now you're in charge of people, and you don't know your job, and now you're trying to get them to know your job. It's only going to be a matter of time before the people who actually know the job realize that you don't. That's totally different than in the midst of being in the midst of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is that I am actually doing the job, right? But I still have not allowed, like Gaddy said, my understanding of who I am to catch up with the evidence that is proven to me that it's already in play. So we would downplay it, you would, sidestep it, you will come up with every excuse under the sun just to, say it that way. And I think it's important to understand this is not saying that, oh, well, because of imposter syndrome, I can go forward and just start giving myself all praise and glory. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're trying to get across is that in essence, it is a specific form of self doubt that can significantly impact one's mental health and productivity. So that's kind of like what we're getting at. It's not considered a psychological disorder, but it is something that can be looming and cause some type of insecurities and things of that nature. Godfrey, you had your hand up, bro. You want to say something?
Yes, I got a question or comment, Coach. All right, so this past weekend, right? Saturday I did a 21K. Sunday I did a 10K, and then I did a 5K with obstacles. People was like, "Oh man, you did just such a good job," but I was like downplaying it because I'm just like, when I was out there, I wasn't nowhere near like the top of anybody. Like those guys were like elite. Like those were like a bunch of dudes that's really, really into shape. Everybody out there got sick. Most people out there with six-packed abs, all ripped up. They're young, they're buff, all these different things like that. So I'm just like, I've been downplaying. I'm just like, y'all say that. They're like, oh yeah, you do all this stuff. But when I'm over there with them people, it's like no one over there is praising anybody. So it's like I kind of in a sense like feel that inadequacy. So when people say, yeah, Garfield, yeah, you did this, but I'm just like, no, I just finished the race. I wasn't, near the top or anything like that. So is that like considered like imposter syndrome, or is that just something totally different? Anybody?
I,
I
I think that. Go ahead.
no, I don't know. I don't know if I would say that's imposter syndrome, because I'm looking at that as self-awareness, right? Because some people can get louder, their heads to get big. Yeah, I did a good job. I did a good job. When and then put themselves in a bad situation, going out trying to compete against these young cats and pull a hammy because they didn't belong out there trying to keep up, like, and being funny. But I think that's just having that true self-awareness. No, I might or I might have completed the race, and some people look at that as, oh, you did a good job, you finished, uh, that participation trophy mindset. But you realize, no, if I really did a job, I'll be able to compete with these guys over here who are probably competitors at this. Versus, I think imposter syndrome probably would have been more so you were actually competing with those guys, but felt like you did nothing, or like you didn't belong in that circle. You know what I'm saying? That's how I'm viewing it.
Like if I was one of like the top guys, right? So if I was like, I'm placing top 2, top 3 or something like that, right? And then I'm downplaying it, then that would kind of more so be imposter syndrome.
Right. I think if you were constantly at the top and never allowed yourself to see, like, dude, I'm that dude when it comes to this. What you did was you did a comparison thing because of an internal inadequacy feeling. Because you like, man, I'm not where they are. So you comparing yourself to them because you see them here, you seeing yourself here. So you minimize your ability to finish when everybody else like, dude, you did a good job, and you couldn't take the compliment because you didn't feel a certain way. Now, if you were at the top every week and you still feel like, man, I didn't do a thing, even though I've beaten everybody, I'm still not there. I'm still not where I should be. Those people, that's where it comes to those high achievers and whatnot.
Or it could be at a subconscious level, you don't know how to take a compliment, because to some people, you just finishing the race means you did a good job. You understand what I'm saying? But in your head, if I'm not up here in the top 10, then I didn't do a good job according to me. You understand what I'm saying? So in the eyes of people watching you, yeah, you did a good job because you actually finished. You actually entered in the first place. So you know how much it guts to take to run that much in that short of a span of time? Like that takes a lot. And for some people, that's like, man, you did that. But then you like, yeah, I did all of this, but I know I could have done better. I could have been up there with them. Thank you for noticing, but I know I could have done better. You understand what I'm saying? So it could have been something like that. I suffer from that too, so I get it.
I like what you just said, because that's kind of like what I was thinking. Um, I would say, flat out, no, that's not imposter syndrome. I would say it's more so of your understanding of what success is. If we go into, and I think I am real big on success, and I talk about this all the time, and I always ask people like, what is success to you? Because you've heard it time and time again. You can ask all five of us, and our interpretation of success will look different. To some people, success in that race could have been like finishing in the top one or two, right? Or three. If I don't finish one, two, or three, then I don't view it as success. I kind of wasted my time. To some people, completion was just success. Some people may have been coming off an injury. Some people look at their age and like, man, I think Roland, you mentioned being out there with those young cats. Some people look at their age and like, man, that dude, 22 years old. If I can go out there and compete against him and even just simply be competitive, that is success. I'm actually watching a movie with Mark Wahlberg, and they're doing some type of run similar to what you're talking about. And man, I enjoyed it. I fell asleep on it, but I got to go back and finish watching. I was tired. It's not that the movie isn't good. I was tired. Okay. Um, but it's a really good movie when it comes down to these competitive races, and it's a run, it's a bike ride, it's a rock climb, it's all of these things. And so just watching that and thinking about what you're saying, I'm not sure if you guys did a rock climb, but whatever, like just running for the distance that you say, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you. So just going out there and doing it and beginning it to me is success. Like you're going to ask me to get out my bed and go do a 21K run in my mind off. Not doing it. Not going to do it. So just getting over that hurdle, just showing up is success. Starting is success. So that's where I would start at with it, right? So I wouldn't say that that's imposter syndrome. I just say that that is just kind of like understanding what my metric of success is before I begin a thing. If I have an understanding what success is, then I can look at what it is and so forth and so on. And then even if I don't hit my mark, if somebody comes to me and say, "Hey, congratulations," I still can be receptive, like Chris said. I still can be receptive to them saying congratulations because in their mind, I looked like success. So that's a whole different metrics, and
And I
that's
think, yeah, I think that what everybody said helped bring everything together. Helped me, gave me that piece was more clarifying than us all giving our own definitions. Just to me,
right.
because there was an example thrown in there. So I appreciate all y'all point of views and perspectives and stuff like that. It's kind of seems like it's more of a, what I was looking at, that when they were telling me congratulations, they were looking at it from this lens. And when I was receiving it, I was looking at it from a different lens that they were saying this to me from. So
Right.
I totally get that. So because when they're telling me that they're looking at it from their lens, hey, I've been sitting on the couch, I ain't doing nothing, ain't nobody going out there and do that. And I'm just like, look, everybody out here doing this, you know what I mean? And I'm all the way down here at the bottom, you know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
but I get it. I appreciate that.
So I'm glad you asked that, and I'm glad that provided some clarity. So I kind of want to throw this question out there because this is going to continue to make it more clear. We kind of talked about like one or two of them, but what are some common feelings that a person would experience who is struggling with imposter syndrome?
Stress. Stress. I could see somebody, feeling inadequate. Somebody's at the top and still feeling like they're not good enough. You know what I mean? I can only imagine that from like from a small point of view, even as as an NCO or as somebody in the military been in charge and just not knowing. You know what I mean? So I can only imagine if I actually suffer from imposter syndrome, doing these great things, working hard to be an overachiever and being at the top of the game and still feeling like it wasn't good enough. Like, I don't want that. Yeah, you can have that.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
It's almost like you feel like you don't deserve what you're going for. It almost feels like you feel like you don't deserve what you're going for, even though you know you deserve what you're going for because the divine creator put that wrinkle in your brain. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's like you procrastinate. You don't really go for it because you really don't feel like you should be getting it. You feel like something that you've done in your past is the reason why you should not be where you are. You understand what I'm saying? Or the reason why you should not be able to go wherever you want to go, wherever you put your mind to. You understand what I'm saying? It's a feeling of I don't deserve this, but I want it, so should I go get it? But I'm still gonna go get it. But I feel like I don't deserve it while I'm going to get it. You understand what it's weird. It's weird. It's a weird feeling. And you put it off and you put it off until one day the divine creator says, you're not about to put this off no more. You're back against the wall. Now I'm gonna make you do it. Now what? What's your next level? I'm not the only one you need a level 2 to deal with.
I think one of those things may be a person may feel like everybody but them deserves this award, even though it was through their ability. Where you like somebody could because they can't feel it, so they gonna say, "Well, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Sergeant Major Morrissey, Sergeant Major Fuentes, if it wasn't for Coach." And they giving everybody else the accolades and appreciation, but themselves, not allowing them to feel like this because they don't feel like they could have achieved this outside of other people. It had to be something else outside of themselves.
Say anxious, waiting for the bottom to fall out. Like,
Did you say anxiousness?
I'm up here. Yes.
Okay.
I think that you have a feeling of being anxious, expecting the bottom to fall out because you're in a place you don't belong, right? Like, kind of a little bit like what Uncle was bringing up when he talked about the promotion. Like, I got this promotion, I'm in this position, I'm doing this job. You know, everyone else around might be saying good job, but I'm like, they're just saying that to make me feel good. I'm not really doing a good job. Sooner or later, I'm going to lose everything I have. Or I come from here, I'm not supposed to have this. And sooner or later, I'm going to lose it because I don't know how to maintain it because I never had it because this is too much for me. I'm inadequate for the trajectory I'm heading. And I stick right there. I can't be expecting everything to crumble suddenly one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got an alibi. I think that one of the things I was thinking about was I wonder if I know some people like this, right? And the reason being, I think that some of these people are overworkers, right? Those people who work really late at night. Those people who are like I can imagine somebody who is like super successful, right? And then they're still working 16, 17, 18 hours a day because they still feel like it's not enough. You know what I mean? I still haven't made it yet. So for me, just to add into it, I think that being overworked is something that can come with someone struggling with imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I definitely agree. When we first started out, excuse me, when we first started out, we discovered two of them, at least two or three of them. And we talked about dismissing praise. And we also talked about like being exposed. That was kind of like, I think somebody else put in the chat as well. But those were a couple of the ones that we talked about. But then Garfield, you started off with inadequacy, and I like that because inadequacy is a huge one. And there was some other get. I was struggling over here. I think I don't know if it was my my internet or yours, but I was kind of struggling hearing over here. Please forgive me if I missed anything. So let me just kind of give you the ones that I have. And if I kind of uncovered, if I say the same thing again, please forgive me. So inadequacy is a huge one. You will really start to feel inadequate. You feel like you don't belong, like you met all the accolades to actually apply for the job. But then once you get to the job, you start talking to other people and you realize that this person got a PhD, this person did this for like X amount of years and got a PhD and so forth and so on. And I got a bachelor's degree, but yet I still got the job and I don't feel like I belong. And then that's when self-doubt start kicking in. And we talked about that one previously. There's a big sense of doubting my own self. And it doesn't matter what the evidence produces, no matter what someone says in relation to the work that I've done, they will look at me. I will look at myself and be like, man, and it's stressful. It's a high degree of stress. We tend to call it low cortisol drip constantly. And if we understand what that really means, cortisol is the thing that is responsible for the fight or flight within you, right? Well, the issue with that is that when your adrenaline goes up, your body defenses go down because all of that energy got to come from someplace. But when your body defenses go down, you are more susceptible to diseases, sicknesses, whatever the case may be. So that being said, if I am in a work environment and I have put this on myself to where I don't feel like I'm belong, I feel like I'm an imposter, I feel like I'm a phony, and eventually somebody's going to figure me out, then in essence, what ends up happening is that I am inducing a low cortisol drip within me. And then eventually it will get to the point to where I will start getting sick back to back to back and things of that nature. And then that leads me to the next point, fear of being exposed. But eventually my fear is that somebody is going to look at me and say that I do not belong in that position. How did you get this job? You know, who hired you? Or you hear it sometimes, some people joke and say it, or they'll just hire anybody. I know they say it jokingly as a, just kind of like a conversation starter, whatever the case may be, but we don't necessarily understand the secondary and tertiary effects that go along with that. Next, you will have this thing called perfectionism. Now, I got it. Some people just have perfectionism just because that's just who they are. They put that much stress on themselves. But here's the other side to it. You can go through perfectionism in the sense of imposter syndrome because you're trying to prove your own worth, right? So that becomes another degree of stress that you put on yourself. And then eventually you'll get to the point of overworking, right? Which means you'll go to work 8 days a week, 8 days a week. You'll go to work 8 hours a day, and you'll come home and work an additional 3 hours until the wee hours in the morning because you just want to put together the best product ever and you want to impress everybody that you work with. And then eventually you'll get to the point of sabotaging one's own success, where you will undermine your own success to avoid the risk of being found out. And then next you'll have the guilt about success, which is in essence the feeling unworthy of success or uncomfortable when receiving recognition or praise, like we talked about previously. And then last is dismissing of praise. And I think all of these, if we really think into them, I think we are really starting to get after it. So I kind of want to use that as a springboard to get into the statistics because I think it's important. I think it's alarming. And when we really hear it, it'll go back to what Garfield said a few seconds ago. Studies suggest that up to 70% of people will experience symptoms of imposter syndrome at some point in their life. Research indicates that about 20 to 30% of high achievers may suffer from imposter syndrome, and it is particularly prevalent among women in academia. While it affects both men and women, women are often more likely to report feeling imposter syndrome. I think the key here is that they will report it. I think men, we just deal with it and suffer in silence. So I think that's why those numbers can be skewed. Individuals from minority groups or those who feel like outsiders due to their cultural background are more likely to experience imposter feelings. A UK study found that Black, Asian, and minority ethnic students were more likely to experience imposter syndrome compared to their white counterparts. Imposter syndrome is notably prevalent in fields like academia, medicine, tech, where high levels of expertise and performance are expected. For example, in the tech industry, around 58% of tech workers have reported feeling imposter syndrome. And last but not least, imposter syndrome is linked to increased anxiety, depression, and stress, and can severely impact job satisfaction and overall quality of life. And I think eventually what that person will end up doing is looking for another job because in essence they don't even feel like their presence is worth being there. Okay, that takes us to the 3 steps that we promised you, and I think you're going to get more. And Miss McCoy, this kind of gets after your question. Okay, so the question I want to start off with, and Michelle, I'm gonna get to that question here in a second. Um, the question I want to start off with here is, what are some effective strategies we can use to transform the fear of being found out as a fraud into a feeling of genuine confidence in our abilities?
This is tough. And the reason why I'm saying it's tough because what I'm about to say is very simple, but it is not easy. It really isn't. Just have to be confident. You just have to know that you were put in that position because you have what it takes to be in that position. You understand what I'm saying? The only way that people can expose you as a fraud is if you were in a position and you yourself know you're not supposed to be there. You understand what I'm saying? But if you have the accolades, if you have the credentials, if you have the experience to be where you are, walk in that. People are only trying to expose you as a fraud because they can't do what you do or they want what you have or they think they should have what you have. Be confident in what you're doing. You shouldn't be afraid of being exposed as a fraud if you're really not one.
I think that when it comes to this, and sometimes we stop ourselves. We will act like whatever. We don't always notice the emotion, and if we do, we let it pass. So since this is tied to emotions, tied to feelings, when you notice it, sometimes you got to just stop right there and say, okay, let me actually feel this. Let me actually see what other people see. Because when you can stop right there and say, man, I'm doing it again. I'm stopping myself from feeling this part of how good I am. I'm minimizing my achievements. I'm putting myself down, and it's me that's doing it. So stop right then and look in the mirror and allow yourself to feel and be in that space so that you will recognize it if it comes up again. And then you can move forward from there. And when it does come, you can say, okay, I'm doing it to myself again. Let me allow myself to be me. Let me allow myself to be in my greatness per se.
I'm trying to write the rest of it down. Um, I think some of it has to do with, when we look at our mindset, the thoughts that come to our mind, right? So I think some of this, well, apparently all of this is in the mind, right? So I think some of the things we have to do is start challenging the information that comes in our head, right? So, and when we are feeling inadequate, I think that's a good time to start challenging that. Okay, so what is it about me? What is it about this situation? Why am I feeling inadequate? You know what I mean? So, um, this is a good question, and it requires a little bit of thought, and that's why I'm kind of going really slow with this. And I think I only got a certain part of it. So, um, as I'm thinking it out, like I said, I think when I think challenging that self talk or challenging those negative thoughts that cause the imposter syndrome when they happen, I think that's a good place. I think that's one strategy and a good place to start for me. Because like I said, a lot of stuff starts in your mind. So if you accept that thought, then it's just going to continue on. So I think initially we need to start with stopping or challenging that thought.
I like that. So let's put a pin there, and I want to come back to what you just said. Roland and Chris, I want to go back to what you guys said. Um, how can I do it? Like, based upon what you said, what each of you said, when you go back and think about what you said, how can you teach me, or how can I actually put what you just said into action?
I think when you notice something, write it down. Everybody got notepads, notes in their phone, and identify the feeling that you're feeling at the moment when you find yourself ducking the responsibility of being yourself, of acknowledging applause, accepting applause. When you feel like that, like what makes you go into that little recluse position to say, I'm not that good, or I'm not this, or minimizing yourself? Notice that feeling so that the next time it comes about, you not only notice it, you can say, okay, maybe I am. So now you start to tell yourself the things that got you where you are, the work that you did put into it. Because if you don't talk to yourself and everything has to come from somebody else, you are already in a position where what people say really doesn't matter because you have a low position of the achievements that you push forward. So that won't work. So just writing them down, just first of all, notice them, stop, notice things, and then you can sit up there and say, okay, I wrote this down, and now you can reassess your position on things. Like, man, I did that. So now your mentality changes about what you did and your achievements, your position in this. So now it's not a minimization, it's a acknowledgement of where you are.
I would go along with that thought process with the answer that I gave. Look at everything that you did to get to where you are. You understand what I'm saying? Just look at everything you did. Look at all of the stuff that you had to do to get to where you are. You should be proud of yourself. You understand what I'm saying? You're not a fraud because you don't feel like you should be where you are. You are where you are because of the work you put in. Keep putting in the work. Like Unc, I'm envious of you. You got up and ran a bunch in a short span of time. You understand what I'm saying? That takes a lot. That's a win. I hate running. I can't stand it. But you just to a lot, like I said, man, to a lot of people, just showing up is winning. And you when you showed up and ran with them, that's a win. You actually being out there. Just look at all the look at everything that you've done when you actually think that you're not supposed to be where you are. You don't feel like you deserve to be where you are and say, I worked for this, I deserve to be here. But don't be arrogant about it because the divine creator can take it from you. That's where the humility comes into play. Yeah, I'm supposed to be here, but I'm not better than you as a person. I just did what I was supposed to do to get to where I am right now. There's nothing fraudulent about that, and there's nothing arrogant about that. As long as I'm not throwing it in your face saying I got your position, na boo boo. You understand what I'm saying? As long as you ain't doing that, I don't see what the issue is. But but like I said, man, a lot of people don't. A lot of people achieve great things and really don't feel like they deserve it because of things that they've done or people in their life that tell them that they deserve it, or even their own thought process. Like, man, I came from this and I'm all the way here, and I'm different. I'm different now, so I'm acting different. I'm thinking different. I'm moving different. But this is how I used to be. So is the new me a fraud because I grew up? You know what I'm saying? That's also a side of it that people don't think about too.
Yeah. Brother Gaddy, you good? Can you chime in on this, or you need a little time?
I was about to say we'll see. If I'm still a little glitchy, let me know. Um, I don't know for with this topic. Um, or when I'm looking at how do we transform from the perspective of being found out, I think it's getting to the core of what is it that makes you feel inadequate, and then addressing that, right? Um, I know. I would say when I look at the promotion that I got on the job, and I look at the other people in that same position, right? At least here on the educational level, man, them jokers been in school longer than I've been living. They got degrees out the wood. You know, I'm saying it jokingly, and so it's easy sometimes to say, "Adequate, I can't do the job. Everybody else got this," and I'm just right here. If a part of it can be doing if I do the job well, have confidence that I'm doing it well, and if I wasn't, they would replace me, or go fill that void. If I feel like I'm inadequate because of education, maybe I don't need to go get a doctorate, but maybe go get certification. Maybe take an HR Pro course, or something, a leadership course, something that makes me feel a little more confident in my understanding of how to do what I'm supposed to versus just waiting to be found out, because that anxiety will drive you crazy. I believe, um, but that's all I have on this part.
I do like that, and I appreciate you sharing your experience. And I love what everybody else said. I'm gonna inject this in before we press forward because I think it's important to unpack that as well. So the question here is that is people pleasing one as well? So is people pleasing kind of like an expression of um, imposter syndrome?
I wouldn't say so. I would say people pleasing is just that person's inability to say no. I don't call that an imposter syndrome. It's just that you don't know how to say no, or you don't think it's okay to say no. So you try to please everybody around you and keep everybody happy, when really you just making everybody mad because you can't make everybody happy. That's how I view people pleasing. The trying to be liked by everybody, which is virtually impossible.
I think that can be roped into a person who has that mentality that I can do it all. Like whatever you put it on their plate, on their plate, they figure I can do it. I can get it done because in their mind, they can get it done. They can make it happen. Whereas if you gave it to somebody else, I ain't doing that. But to them, it's like, man, I can do it because they know they can. So it may turn into a people pleasing match because they can do the job and they aren't looking for any pats on the back, anything like that. But they they think they know they can do it, but they refuse to allow themselves to get the credit for doing it.
Um, I would say that pleasing by itself may not be imposter syndrome, but it can be an attribute of a person suffering with it, right? I.e., like, all right, maybe if I just do the things that the boss is asking me for, and I keep everybody happy, and I do these things so people don't get mad, maybe that'll disguise the fact that I don't know what I'm doing, or that I don't belong here, or maybe that'll keep them happy that I can stick around long enough to collect my pension and not get fired. I can see how it can be, but I wouldn't say people pleasing alone is imposter syndrome.
Man, I'm still over here trying to figure this thing out. Um, but from what I'm figuring out, I would probably lean towards no. Um, I think that it could be something that can go along with it, but I don't know if just doing that would actually be considered imposter syndrome. But I do think that this could be a trait, or it could be a way that someone may be able to, I think it could be just like a side effect of imposter syndrome. So that's kind of what I think. I think it could be a side effect, but not necessarily just overall people pleasing in general. That's my 2 cents.
So let me kind of inject this one in. Um, we talked about the feelings, the experiences, the feelings that people who suffer from imposter syndrome go through, right? And just to kind of rehash them, we talked about inadequacy, we talked about self doubt, we talked about fear of being exposed, we talked about perfectionism, we talked about overworking, we talked about sabotaging one's success, guilt about success, and dismissing praise. Is it possible that a person who is experiencing imposter syndrome will not tell their supervisor or somebody no because they're trying to validate their existence,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is pleasing, people pleasing.
which is people pleasing? So, and I really like this question, right? Because I think a lot of times we separate, we hear something like imposter syndrome, and we will quickly go to a job. But when you look at people pleasing, well, is it possible that imposter syndrome also exists in relationships?
Definitely, definitely. That's it's the same mentality I used to have when I was in the military. Everything was about the military. I don't care what happened. You talking about going on vacation? I got to push these soldiers. I got stuff to do. I got to make sure this is done because I feel an inadequacy in me, whereas other people say, "Oh, you're good at this and you're good at that." Where I'm looking at it like, I got work to do. I ain't got time to be you patting me on the back for some trivial things. I don't need no awards because I'm looking at it like I'm not good. So I'm steady trying to prove that I'm good, not thinking that anything that I'm doing is good enough.
So you're saying that just like a person would do that at work, that's how they show up in a relationship as well. It doesn't matter what's going on. Sometimes they get to the point to where because they have a people pleasers mentality, they don't feel like anything they're doing is good enough.
Not good enough. They like in a relationship, you'll find that whatever the person, the spouse or whomever wants, it's like, okay, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna make it happen. You said you want this, and nothing is pleasing to them, but they're trying to appease the person, thinking that somewhere along the way they'll get some pleasure out of it. But all they're trying to do is minimize confrontation and say, I can do it, or look at me, I'm making it happen. Is you got you husband of the year in somebody's book but your own. Your wife of the year, you're making it happen, but to you, you haven't done enough. Father of the year and grandfather, you look like, man, I still got a lot of work to do. I ain't nowhere near where Cliff was.
I don't want to be with
I,
Cliff
I
was.
think
Go ahead.
I think when we talk about relationships, though, I think you see it in a different way sometimes. Like those people who either extremely shut out of their relationship or create uh constant arguments, and because it's that level of if we're always trying to fix it, you never know that I ain't got it. Or if I shut down, or not if I shut down, but I shut down because I don't think that I can be what she or he wants me to be. Or maybe I wasn't taught, I don't feel like I was taught how to be a husband or a father or a mother or a wife. And so I always defer, you know, I because I think when I listen to a lot of people talk about what's it, and I'm like, starting problems on purpose. But is it because that's the only place that I feel like there's motion? Because I don't feel like I can exist in her space organically. So I have to create a problem to be fixed. So I have to, I don't know. I'm
What are y'all thinking? Okay. All right.
I don't know, man, because I was under the impression that imposter syndrome was either A, you feeling undeserving of what you have, or or you are in a spot where you pretty much don't have the qualifications to be there.
Not so much the qualifications, but feeling like you would be exposed as a fraud or a phony. You may have all the qualifications.
Okay, I'm learning. I'm learning.
It's like in a relationship, a husband or a wife may be doing everything that they know to do, but in their head they're not doing enough because they say, "Oh man, I still got to get this, and I still got. Oh, she need a new car. He need to do, new this." And you're saying they have everything they need, love and the whole nine, but you, from your vantage point, it's not enough. I'm not giving enough. I'm not doing enough. So now that person is burning themselves out, trying to appease the whole household, and the whole household saying, "Man, you're doing a good job. Why don't you sit down?" They say, "No, I got a lot to do." You remember Florida Evans? Florida Evans, she threw that thing down when she was trying to do everything after James died. And then she threw it down and she said her 3 words. And that was one of the things that people remember because she reached the boiling point to where that stress was going to sit her down before somebody else could say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Why don't you just take some time off?"
So, in other words, what I'm hearing you say is that anytime I tie who I am or the position I am in a relationship and I limit it to only what I do, then it's a high probability that I will experience imposter syndrome because I will never be able to do enough or I am not equipped on my own accord to do everything that needs to be done to fulfill the mantle in which I'm supposed to be.
That's why they call you coach. That's yes.
All
That,
right.
hey, I'm with you there. Yes.
I heard some words in there. I heard, your level of success. I heard enough and I heard fulfilled, right? So what I'm looking at is that like what lens, like if I think I'm doing a good job, right? But at the same time I got a house, I got a car, I got all the bills and stuff are paid, go on vacations, twice a year, got the white picket fence, got the best trained dog in the neighborhood, got the nice yard. Everything is good, right? So, but what lens am I looking through life from if I'm still feeling like I'm not adequate enough? You know what I'm
Perfectionism.
saying? Huh?
Perfectionism.
The perfectionism lens.
Because what's next? A bigger house, a
Right.
better car. You looking at the next. You never appreciate what you have because you too busy looking at what's next.
But where does that come from? Like that, this person or that person in this scenario, whatever, like this, or like, and I understand it's a perfectionism lens, but they have to have their eye on something in order to see this is what perfection looks like, and I'm not there yet. So since I'm not there yet, is it really imposter syndrome or is it, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Let's go back. Go back.
okay.
Remember you asked the question in the beginning, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
said that it wasn't imposter syndrome. It was just probably not necessarily having a clear identity of success.
There you go.
Well, some people they have a clear identity of success, but I'm sorry, a clear depiction of success, but their depiction of success is just astronomical. It doesn't even pass the common sense test when you ask them
Okay.
to lay it down and make it make sense. So at the end of the day, they will work themselves to the bone simply because they're trying to reach something that is virtually impossible to reach. And then the mate that they're with, like, hey, I'm supposed to be a part of this relationship as well. So eventually it'll get to the point where that person now it turns over. So instead of this high drive to do, they're hearing what their mate is saying, and it's like, I'm not enough. I'm inadequate. there's nothing I can do to please you. You wasn't trying to please that person to begin with. You was trying to please you. And so what would end up happening is that it can change. So on one hand, to death it was part, and blah blah blah, and all this other great stuff. And now I'm goal oriented, focusing on this, but I forgot that there's another party in this, oneness that was supposed to exist. And so it can turn in the midst of their existence together to where you're constantly hear your partner say, "Hey, what can we do? How can we? Well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this and I'm doing that." But now we're getting after the perfectionism thing. Even though the perfectionism is based upon their perception of what success is, their perception of what success is for them. It's not for the relationship. And because it is not for the relationship, the constant conversation that can happen in time and space, they'll get to the point to where, oh, that person's going to leave me. That person, you see what I'm saying? So a whole bunch of self-talk will start happening.
To me, that doesn't
Go ahead.
sound like perfectionism. That sounds like arrogance, because you're arrogant enough to think that that picture of success that you have in your head matches the picture of success that's supposed to go along with what's going on in this situation. You understand what I'm saying? That's why I'm lost, because I you mentioned one party trying to do everything while leaving the other party to just be, and I'm like, how can you do that when you're in a union? That's why I kind of wanted to shy away from this, because I didn't want to go down the relationship rabbit hole. But to me, it sounds like arrogance.
I'm doing that intentionally because I'm really trying to open our mind up to say, like, we will talk about things, but the thing we'll talk about, we'll only talk about it in one arena. But what we have to realize that it's not just in one arena, it's across spectrums, right? So it'll show up in the space of work, easily identified, right? It'll show up in relationships and next to never identified. And I think that's the space to where we exist in a lot of time. And so that what you'll find is that so most people don't have to go through the imposter syndrome of the relationship that they will find, because they have these ridiculously long ideas. They just say, hey, you know what? I don't want no relationships. I'm good. And I'll stay by myself. That way I don't have to deal with it. Yes, sir.
No, it was kind of choppy right there. The
Me?
sound. Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. So yeah, what I was saying is that it's not just in a work setting. It's across spectrums. Whoever you are at work, you're the same person wherever you go, right? So that's the point. And what we have to realize is that sometimes we put on masks and facades, and we exist in spaces because we want people to think that we're somebody that we're not. And unfortunately, we do that when it comes to relationships as well.
And it's the same when you ever been around a person where they say, okay, well, do this. And they tell you to do it and you start doing it. You're not doing it fast enough. You're not doing it to their liking because they feel they can do it better than you. So now they start doing that and they start doing something else. And then now it's, well, ain't nobody helping me. And then you busy, you telling everybody what to do and then you doing it. And now it's all about you getting it done, but nothing's ever done to your liking, because it can be perfect, but it's not done to your liking ever. You're never pleased, and that person is always on edge. Somebody coming over to the house, they're gonna be judging me for this. Or the person, like in the military, I was in the military with some people where they felt like, because in my job you had to get a bunch of certifications, so the more certifications you got, supposedly the better you are. And if you didn't have, some people, I look at it like, man, I'm this. Look at my NCOER and everything. I'm stacked. But that person looking at it like, man, I still need to go here. I need to go to battle staff. It's never filling to them. So they're never fulfilled because in their mind, they are still minimalistic when it comes to the grand scheme of things. So they are putting this imposter is self-imposed.
In most cases, yes.
I don't know. When I look at imposter syndrome in relationships, it's more along the lines of playing a role to get what you want until you've gotten what you want. You understand what I'm saying? Or pretending to be something that you're not until your real feelings start coming out. I don't. That's the imposter syndrome I view in relationships. I don't know about the other side of it because I haven't experienced that side of it as far as like marriage and what you do in a union like that. But in relationships, and I'm just not talking man woman, I'm talking friends and all of that. They find out who you really are, and you just playing a role. That's
Yeah.
what I view imposter syndrome as. You're not really being yourself. You being a character. Like most of these people on it. You know what? I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm not gonna do that tonight. I'm sorry. I'm
I
sorry. I'm
got
not
you.
gonna do that tonight.
I was ready for it.
You're not wrong, sir. You're not wrong. Unc, you got something else before we press on, man?
Nope, nothing at all.
All right, let's get after these 3 steps. We promised everybody at least 3 steps. So we're going to kind of get after it. And we talked about one of them already. And the first step is self-assessment and awareness. Okay. So the question I want to ask you, gentlemen, is in what ways can self-assessment and awareness help a person to overcome imposter syndrome?
We talked about it earlier. Self-awareness is you being aware of self, which means you are aware of all of the things that you had to do to get to where you are. You are not an imposter. You just grew up and the old you is dead, but the people around you or the subconscious mind is still trying to compare who you are now to who you were back then. Be aware of where you are and be aware of how hard you work and be aware that sometimes change means progress and you got to change. You're not an imposter. You just better than where you were.
I just think that when you are aware, when you take like when you're aware of your when you're aware of yourself, your behaviors, how you act, you're aware of your thoughts. I think that that just helps you become a better person overall, right? So it definitely can help you overcome imposter syndrome. And then just being able to like when I look at self-assessment, I look at that as an assessment means that it's an action, something actually needs to be done. You know what I mean? So not only am I just aware, what actionable steps am I taking to help overcome this? And I think, this kind of goes back to the challenge in the self-talk piece. You know what I mean? um is that's something you can actually do to actually help us self-assess yourself when those thoughts come. Challenge those thoughts and do something with them. So that's my 2 cents. The self-talk, challenge the self-talk piece again.
That was the point I wanted you to bring back to the table. Go ahead, Ro.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
When you're aware of something and you notice it, because I do it to myself all the time because I know I can be a certain way. So I try to, okay, if I identify something that I dislike or I want to change, now I can say, okay, how I can sit back and think about what led me to this. What were the things that led me to feel like this, to think like this, and to move like this? Now, when I have that feeling coming going forward, I can sit up there, I can stop and change it. You'll see me sometimes I put my fingers together. So because I've been in therapy enough to where I know I put them fingers together so you can sit up there and think and breathe. And now you mentally assess where you are in this thing and you can start saying, man, dang, I did do this and I do feel like this. And once you start saying what you are doing, now you can change it instead of saying I'm not doing enough.
If y'all recall previously, Roland said that when he put his fingers together, he'd do this so he don't have to slap nobody. Um, listen, I'm agreeing. I'm gonna go a step further with this, right? I think, and for those of you who will be with me in the morning, you'll hear me talk more about this in detail. Everything that you have in your life, everything that you experience in your life, that is before you came from behind you. And so it's important for me to do a self assessment so I can be aware of the things that's behind me that is actually showing up in front of me. Like if you think about it, when you decide to buy a car, whatever year, make, and model of the car you decide to buy, now when you decide that you're going to buy that car, you start looking for that car and so forth and so on. When you drive down the street, you spot that car everywhere you go. And that's exactly how that happens. So what we have to realize is that it takes a honest effort. Like you have to put forth the effort so you can understand where these thoughts are coming from, where these behaviors are coming from, where these feelings are coming from. And then that's not the part where you stop. That's the part where you begin. and you have to backtrack and continue to find out what was the root cause of that particular feeling. And then I think from there, what you need to do is the next thing that we're going to talk about. So I wanted to start there because I think this is an important place to go. Because moving on to the next question here, we should we should recognize and reflect on our own thought patterns, like Garfield said. Right. So how can recognizing and reflecting on our own thought patterns help us dismantle the feeling of fraudulence associated with imposter syndrome?
Well, you can't change what you don't recognize. So once recognized, you can start working on measures to move forward. Okay, how can I go a different route? Now you can start navigating some type of in the military. We use algorithms in the medical field, so you can have an algorithm to say, okay, if I do this, I need to do this, so I won't go this route. So I won't be the people pleasing person that think I know everything, the person that think I need to do everything. I can just sit down and enjoy the space I'm in.
Garfield?
Man, I'm still trying to read the question. I'm only halfway through.
I absolutely love it here. I
Coach.
promise I love it here.
Coach write his he write his questions in the form of a novel, so it takes us a little bit to break them down.
Oh my gosh, man. You guys are terrible.
Oh, man.
But I think Roland hit it on the head. Once you recognize your thought patterns and why you're thinking that way, you can ask yourself why you're thinking that way. And then when you figure out the way that you're thinking is fraudulent, then you can go on about your way.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm rolling with them.
Okay, very well. Just to add to it, I think we have a certain level of conditioning that we grew up in. Um, you don't have if I can say it this way, I don't think you really have singularness of thought. It comes in a package deal. So if I think about a thing, then that thing is connected to something else, which is connected to something else, which is connected to something else. And now I have a thought package. So it has to get to a point to where I can start pulling the layers back on that thought. Like, what is the thing that shows up that start putting these thoughts together that reminds me of this thing that I discovered back then, right? Case in point, I'm just going to give you a small example. If I walk out the house and go to the mailbox and I see a big old German Shepherd come running down the street, and I automatically get scared. Like, where did that come from? Right. So now I have to trace back. Like maybe when I was young, I was, playing with my homies, going down the street, doing some stuff we had no business doing. And this lady didn't have a dog tied up, and the dog came running out, and I seen him bite my friend. And it scared me to the point to where I said, I'm never going to experience that. I'm not going to ever experience that. So at the sight of any German Shepherd, right? And I can tell you some stories about German Shepherds, but anyway, at the sight of any German Shepherd, I automatically have this anxiety that exists. So I need to go back to unpack that thought process that created fear within me every time I see a German Shepherd, because no one in my house can ever own a German Shepherd after that experience. And that's just kind of like a very simple example. So I think that's how, when we start recognizing and reflecting on thought patterns, how unpacking those thought patterns, pulling them apart and dissecting them and just laying them flat and being completely transparent about them so that we can get to the next section that we're going to get to, which is reframing your mindset. Now, I think this is important, and we started talking about it earlier in some degree. What is reframing your mindset, and how can it help someone overcome imposter syndrome?
All right, so reframing for me, I'll go first. All right. Reframing for me is I am doing things this way. All right. I get up and I do A, and I do B, and then I do C. But A, B, and C is causing my imposter syndrome. So what I need to do is try to figure out how to reframe A, B, and C. So maybe I go D, E, F. maybe I go CBA, BAC, just reframing it and doing it a different way. So and I think this kind of goes back to the other question about the mindset too. When you've changed your mind a little bit, I don't know. Yeah, I think I should have just stopped there when I was talking about adjusting it and just doing it a different way. I think that's simply what reframing is. It's just doing it a different way. And if, like I said, if A, B, and C is causing your imposter syndrome, then possibly changing it or reframing it a different way could help support overcoming imposter syndrome.
Everybody still processing? Just want to
I
make sure.
think reframing your mindset would be. I don't think we've called it that because but it's like you take a negative. Like I always say, if I think something negative, I make myself think three positives of that situation or that thing because I'm trying to change my mentality of how I see it. So I don't know if that's what we're saying. So in that situation, when it comes to imposter syndrome, however you see it, once you identify it, now I have to say, man, I did a pretty good job. I got this done. I got this. Everything was on time. Nothing fell through. There were no shortcomings, and we worked together as a team or whatever. Now I start to look at things from a positive slant versus a negative slant altogether. I think.
I would say reframing your mindset when it comes to imposter syndrome is understanding that if the thought is in your brain, you're worthy of going to go get it, because it wouldn't be in your brain if you weren't worthy enough to go get it. Now, it may take a lot to do it, but you're worthy. You should go do it. And that in itself should change your mindset, because you know that you wouldn't be thinking about it if you didn't know that A, it was possible, and B, that you could do it. So why not just go do it?
I think I got a question.
Sure.
And because I use words, so sometimes for me to help with my thought process, I'll look at certain words. So like when I say reframing, so I'm thinking, okay, if I was to reframe a picture in my house, I would take the picture out, I would get a totally different frame, and then I would put it in a new frame. Right. So, but with this, so I'm wondering, with reframing your mindset, is that throwing out the old mindset and getting a new mindset, or am I simply adjusting my mindset? You know what I mean? So I want some help with this one, because I just kind of got stuck right here where, as I was thinking about this a little bit more and listening to Chris.
So are you asking if there's a difference between reframing and readjusting your mindset? Is that
Well, I
what you're
guess
asking?
when I'm looking at reframing, are we talking about throwing away the old mindset and getting a new mindset? Because when I'm looking at reframing, that's what when I think of reframe, if I'm gonna reframe my picture,
You're gonna
I'm
take it out and put
whole
another
new
frame
frame.
on it.
Yes, but I don't know if with this, if we really need to throw out the whole mindset, or can we just adjust some of the things that's in our mindset?
May
So
I? May I?
yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. I like it.
This is a picture. Okay. This is simply just two slabs of tin with words written on it in black. But this is the frame. So when they created this, they put it in this frame. Now, these two slabs of tin, they look pretty professional. They actually look really good. You know, Garfield, our mentor, has a phrase that he used. And when I first heard him use it, I thought it was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Remember in the beginning when you asked about going and doing that 21K and how you looked at it, so forth and so on? And
Mhm.
remember, we just kind of changed it ever so slightly. And I use me as an example. I said, I'm not going to do it. But sometimes if we reframe our thought of what success looked like, then we can realize that, hey, yeah, I didn't achieve multiple layers of success. So that's all that was. We did in the beginning. We just reframed what you were thinking by giving you different ways to look at it. And that's all reframing is. So when we look at reframing our mindset, it's not that we're throwing things away, we're just changing the direction in which we're looking at it. And instead of looking at this 10, this plain 10 when they created it, now when they put it in this nice wooden case, it looks different. It looks professional. It looks like something you want to present. It's just like when Shell decides she's gonna, you know, make some changes in the house, and she look at a picture on the wall. She says, "I don't like that picture." No, no, I'm sorry. You look at the picture on the wall. You say, "I don't like that picture," and she be like, "Why?" Because it just looked like it don't go there. We didn't change the furniture around and all kind of stuff like that. And then you say, "You know what? I'll be back. I'm going someplace." So you leave the house, and only thing she does is take that picture off the wall and take it around the corner because she had a bigger frame, a better frame she was going to use anyway. She just didn't tell you about it. And she changed the picture out and put it in that frame and then put it back on the wall. Then you come home later and you're looking at it because you expected to see that ugly picture. You're like, man, that's a nice picture. When did you get that? It's the
Yeah.
same picture. It just has a different frame. And that's exactly what we're talking about. A lot of us just really need to reframe the way that we're thinking about a thing. And we'll realize that, it's really not a bad thought. We just were looking at it from the wrong perspective.
Mm.
And what's wrong with throwing away something that's detrimental to you? If it's not doing you any good, it's time to change up, time to do something different. And I like that because I know we all receive awards and everything in that green thing when we retired and all. How
Yeah.
quality show, if you put it on your wall, it ain't going in that green thing. You reframe it. And I don't know whether you keep them or not, but I throw them away.
I don't got none of them.
I think this question here is a really good question because a lot of times where we exist at is that we don't have the tools. We don't necessarily have the know-how. So if a person recognizes, and I think this is the one that, if a person recognizes negative self uh, thought or identity, how can they gain tools to move past just recognition to significantly reducing the initial negative thought? And I'm going to adjust your question, Adrian, just slightly. Not just the initial, the long lasting negative thought.
Now, Coach knows that me, I always try to be positive. Like, I don't care what's going on, I try to be positive. But sometimes everybody has their moments. And when you have a person who has a moment, allow them to be in that moment, to feel in that moment. But I try not to allow people to stay there. Like, I don't even want to stay there. And I have people around me that will remind me, dude, come on now. It's okay. You talked about that long enough. It's time for you to move forward. So if a person does recognize that he has these negative thoughts, he or she has the negative thoughts, how can they move past it or gain the tools? I think one, you always do some sort of self-analysis of where you are, especially when you feel low or high moments. Do a self-analysis. That way, what got you to that low or that high moment will not be what you need to maintain your stability. Because when you identify these things, you're working on self. So always look to work on self. That's why I read books, and that's why I try to listen to people and that think outside of how I think, because I'm not always right. And when you do that, you have various perspectives, and you can be able to be in a cognitive state to where things actually come in and make sense versus whatever I think makes sense.
This is the part where I'm kind of bottom line. How can they gain the tools to move past just recognition to significantly reduce the initial or long-term negative thinking? Look up. Look up and look around you. A lot of times you have the tools sitting in your face. You just have to say something. Recognizing that you have those negative thoughts and you have that negative feeling about your identity is the start. You can't solve a problem until you know what it is. You know what it is now. Say something. You probably got people around you that'll help you walk through it. And you can also weed out the people that ain't supposed to be in your life by speaking up and listening to how they, you know what I'm saying, listening to how they respond. So it's kind of a win-win. You prune out the people that ain't supposed to be there, and the people that are supposed to be there are going to help you map some stuff out. A lot of times they'll fall in your lap and you don't even know it, just because you recognize that you have an issue that you need to solve. The universe has a really, really weird way of putting people in your life that's supposed to be there when they supposed to be there. All you got to do is just recognize that they supposed to be there and that you need somebody. Roland makes a good point, but there's a side of it about somebody else being there that you might need to run some things through that you can trust. You understand what I'm saying? That's where you should start. And like I said, man, a lot of people have those people around them, but since they're living in an imposter syndrome, they don't feel like that they can actually let that side of it go because they've kept up this facade for so long. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to say a facade. They put up this thing that they feel like they have to live up to, but in their brain, they're like, I'm not doing right. Let me say something. Let me do something. So a lot of times you just got to look up.
Some of this negative self-thought or identity is deeply rooted in our early adolescence, childhood, early adult life. So, with that being said, sometimes we need to go and pay somebody and get the tools that we really need. Just being honest. Big mama don't always got the tools. Auntie ain't always got the tools. Unc ain't always got the tools. Sometimes we need to open our wallet, go online and do some research and find somebody who can really, really give us the tools that we need. You know what I mean? I know they spoke on free stuff. I wanted to just plug the paid part, not even a plug, but just somebody who specializing in giving out or handing out tools to help you deal with these things. That's your counselors and your coaches and your therapists and different people like that. They're not for everybody. However, there are a lot of people who could benefit from using and purchasing some paid tools that can really help you. So that's mine, is to get a therapist or a coach or a counselor or somebody like that. Spend a couple of bucks or something like that to really get some tools that can really help you move past just recognition to significantly reducing, and coach said, the long term, not just the initial negative thinking.
I like I like all of this because this is the thing that I really and truly do believe. We are supposed to encounter problems in our lives that we can't solve. I think it was Albert Einstein who said it. This mind has created some problems for me that this mind can't solve. It is virtually impossible for you to solve every problem that you will ever go through. It's part of the growth process. And the thing that we need to understand is that for the most part, when we really stop and think into it, I believe wholeheartedly we have to understand a couple of things. And Uncle Junior, you hit the nail on the head. There's a large portion of our background, our upbringing, our associations, and whatever that looks like, that kind of led to the place where I am now. Am I blaming them? No, because a lot of that is what we tend to call contributing factors. Okay, it is never a contributing factor fault for where I am today in my life. I hear too many times where people want to blame the contributing factor for the decision that we made not to make any changes. To me, that's one of the most mind-boggling things ever. Secondly, I love the fact that they brought up associations. Like, there are people in your life that are there for a reason. We call it a season. They're there to give you what you need, and you are supposed to get it. If you don't get it and they move on, you missed it. And it works in reverse as well. You're supposed to give to that person what you are supposed to give to that person in that season. Again, you miss it. If you miss the lesson that you're supposed to get, it's going to come back around until you get it. I really do believe that. The best investment that we can ever make is the investment that we make in ourselves. Sure, I got a whole bunch of books up here, right? But that's just for me. But there's some things in these books that before, at some points in time when I read it, there's some things I couldn't even see in the book that I was reading. Then when I went and did exactly what Garfield just mentioned, when I went and invested in myself, when I later went back and read those books look different. So again, there are certain things that you cannot see. There are certain things that you can't conceptualize in your current state of mind, because a lot of times what we do is we look at life through the lens of our experiences, thinking our experiences are reality, until somebody like me tell you that your experiences are not reality. They're just your perspective of reality. And as long as you hold on to that perspective of reality, the only thing you're going to keep doing is keep recreating the past. And that is a true and honest assessment. Simply because, like I've done several times before, this is a cup. The only part of this cup that you can see is my name in the swoosh, but you don't see what's on the backside of it. Why? Because you only have one perspective of it. And so the part that we will never have, we'll never have 360-degree, which means I need somebody else to make me aware of what I don't know, so that now when I adopt what they're sharing with me, I know more moving forward, and I can behave differently in the space of these negative thoughts and so forth and so on. So I know that was a very long-winded explanation, and I thank these gentlemen for the way that they unpackaged that. But I hope that we actually answered your question. And please put in the chat and let us know. But thank you for that question. I think that was a great question. I know we're going a little long, but we got one more point we want to give you before we call it an evening. And this was going to be short. The last point is building a support network. See how they just fall in line with it? Building a support network. I think we just answered that. Did we not? I literally think we just kind of unpacked the entirety of this question. So if that's okay with everybody else, again, build a support network. I think it's important. So I kind of take us in our final thoughts, and I didn't tell you guys in the chat. Let's start with Chris. Then we're just gonna kind of go around. Oh, keep gonna close us out tonight, man.
All right.
All right. So Chris, hold on, wait. I'm sorry. I apologize. Y'all be patient with me. I don't have a bundle.
Final thoughts. I guess my final thought is imposter syndrome is a thing. Negative thoughts about your success is a thing. Thinking you don't deserve your success is a thing. Thinking you don't deserve to be where you are is a thing. Sometimes we just have to deal with that. I think that the easiest way, aside from all the steps that we spoke about in the show, is just to be confident in who you are and what you are, and be confident in the work you put in. Most of the time, imposter syndrome comes from outside people and your view of how outside people might view you. But if you have the talent, if you have the skills, and if you have the ability and the credentials to be where you are and to do what you want to do, go do it. It's not imposter syndrome when you're doing what you're supposed to do, even if they try to bring up how you used to be and compare it to who you are now. It's not imposter syndrome. It means you just grow. It means you just grew up. So I guess that's my final thought. Understand that where you are is where you are supposed to be, and you work to get here. So you should be confident in what you are right now.
I say when it comes to imposter syndrome, realize that your feelings and emotions and everything that you have internally is at the core your problem or your situation, because you have the ability to identify and control and manipulate them how you want them to go. So if you don't harness those things and you allow them to control and your elevation of where you see yourself, then it's a problem. So you have to come to some resolve where you identify when you're up, when you're down, what made you feel that way, and getting to a place where when you find yourself too high, you can say, dog, you need to slow it down a little bit. Or you find yourself too low, you say, hey, you give yourself a pat on the back. You should never not appreciate someone else giving you a pat on the back. Now, if they give it, fine. But if they don't, it shouldn't break your spirits. It shouldn't break you down to a place to where you can't make it anymore. When it comes to this, what we're speaking of today, know that you got to continue to tell yourself that you are enough and you can do great things. And what you're doing is adequate enough if it's adequate enough. If it's not, tell yourself, hey, I could have done better, but allow yourself to live in those victories, small victories, large victories, or whatever. Allow yourself to be in the moment so that you can experience it all and not just be the naysayer to your own satisfaction.
Listen, this was a great conversation. I greatly appreciate everybody who joined us this evening. We talked about a number of different things, and we gave you the 3 steps as we promised, right? The first step, again, is self assessment and awareness. The second step is reframing your mindset. And the third is building a support network. And I think that is probably one of the most important parts, because a support network will literally point you back to steps 1 and 2. And if you don't know how to do it, then again, that kind of goes back to what my brother talked about previously. Again, the best investment that you can make is the investment in yourself. So I'm encouraging everybody to take these steps in their daily lives and listen, just continue on this journey towards self-improvement and confidence. And then, for everybody, I want you to leave a comment. Leave a comment, give us your thoughts, let us know what you thought about this entire conversation. Because I think it's good. Go back and look at it again, and just enjoy it.
All right. To close out, and say my final thought, I just want to let everybody know that imposter syndrome, like if you are suffering from it, you are not alone. And you may have to reach out to get some help. So, first of all, just to be aware that if you are suffering from imposter syndrome, you are not the only person in the world who is suffering from this. You know what I mean? And also that when it comes to imposter syndrome, you have to be aware that imposter syndrome loves self doubt and it loves fear. So these are things that you have to try to stay away from, And then lastly, my last little bit is, back down to you're not at it alone. So if you have a wolf pack or a group of homegirls or a group of friends that you can talk to and share different things with, then do that. You know what I mean? Bounce ideas off of them, talk to them about successes and failures that each of you may have and may go through. And then if that's not enough, again, I agree and I believe that at some point that that some people need to go and get help and support by way of paying somebody for those services. So at the end of the day, my final thought to kind of sum up everything I said is that, you are not alone in this imposter. I mean, you're not alone in this imposter syndrome. So don't feel like you're in it all by yourself. And there are people that you can reach out to and get support from. And then also remember that self-doubt and fear are 2 major components when it comes to imposter syndrome. So see what you need to do to develop your mindset so as you can help yourself overcome this, whether it's at a high level or whether it's at a low level. And that's my final thought.
I love it. I love it. Listen, again, like I said, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about, this entire conversation. Also, real quick admin note for those of you who are joining me tomorrow morning. Again, tomorrow morning is Unlocking Abundance to transform your world. And for those who have not joined yet, by all means, the link is showed up. There is also a link in the top of the YouTube chat, which is a free self-assessment when it comes down to imposter syndrome. Listen, that being said, we greatly appreciate you guys. We value you. Again, make sure that you hit that like button and share this information with other people. Share this video with somebody else, because I think one of the things that we understand clearly is that this video will add value. So that being said, next week, same time, 8 p.m. here, Hearts and Men podcast. Listen, let the best version of yourself be the blessing to someone else. And you guys have a phenomenal rest of your weekend.